Right now, something is starting to peak. Tomorrow, Mars moves into Aries. This energy does not ease you in, and it's affecting your connections. That means that right now, it's very likely that a connection in your life is about to be pulled into the foreground, hard and fast. Someone new is about to appear out of nowhere. Maybe it's about to suddenly come back into your space, or something that already existed between you and a person can shift overnight into something you simply cannot ignore anymore. And it's going to feel confusing. But the confusion that comes with it isn't random. It's part of how this energy works. There's a reason why it will be confusing, and I will go over it soon. This is happening within a very short window. Tonight, or over the next few days, there's going to be some form of interaction, shift, or moment that pulls this connection into focus. And when it happens, you need to be aware of what is truly going on. You haven't talked to them. Nothing new has happened. There's no new message, no new moment, nothing you can point to, and yet they keep coming back into your mind like something unfinished. Because normally when there's no new input, your mind lets go. But right now, it doesn't. And the reason is simple. Something about this connection has just been activated, even if nothing visible has happened yet. Mars in Aries pushes instinct forward before reality catches up. So what you're feeling isn't based on what's already happened, it's based on something that's about to. That's why they keep showing up. Not because you're overthinking, but because your mind is reacting to a shift that hasn't fully played out yet. What makes this connection even more confusing is not just how you feel, it's how they show up. Because when they're present, they're fully there. The energy feels direct, focused, almost undeniable. It's not subtle, it's not passive. You can feel the attention, the pull, the intention behind it. And for a moment, it feels clear, like there's no guessing, no mixed signals, no second guessing what this is. And then they pull back, not gradually, not in a way you can track or predict. It just shifts. The same person who felt completely locked in suddenly feels distant, harder to read, almost like they stepped out of the connection without explaining why. That's where most people assume the worst. They think it means the interest wasn't real or that something changed externally. But what's actually happening is internal. This kind of pattern doesn't come from a lack of feeling, it comes from too much of it, too fast. The same intensity that makes them show up strongly is the same intensity that overwhelms them right after. So they don't pull back because nothing is there, they pull back because it's more than they expected to feel. Some people don't disappear because they lost interest, they disappear because they felt too much too quickly. And when you don't understand that, it looks like inconsistency. But when you see it clearly, it's a cycle. They step in fully, then step out to regain control. This is why the connection feels so hard to read, especially in the beginning, because it doesn't follow a normal build. It doesn't slowly develop or give you time to understand what's happening. It starts strong, almost too strong, and then shifts before you can even settle into it. You meet them or reconnect, and almost immediately there's a level of attention, presence, or energy that feels ahead of where things should be. It creates a sense of meaning early on, like something is already forming before it's even had time to develop, and then just as quickly it changes. They become less consistent, less direct, less obvious. And now you're left trying to make sense of two completely different versions of the same person. That's where the contradiction comes from. It's not that they're being one way and then suddenly becoming another. It's that both sides are real, but they don't know how to hold them at the same time. Clarity in the beginning doesn't always mean stability. It can just mean intensity without control. So what you're experiencing isn't a contradiction in the connection itself. It's the result of something starting too strong before there was structure to support it. What starts to surface underneath all of this, and what most people don't want to look at directly, is the quiet fear that if you stop holding onto this connection, it might disappear. Not because something clearly ended, not because there was closure, but because it feels like it's being held together by your awareness of it. Like if you stop thinking about it, stop checking it, stop trying to understand it, it might just fade out completely. And that creates a very specific kind of tension. Because now it's not just about the connection anymore. It becomes about what happens if you let go of your grip on it. There's a hesitation there, a resistance, almost like you're trying to stay one step ahead of it slipping away. You might not even notice it at first, but it shows up in small ways. Replaying moments in your head, checking for subtle signs, trying to read between things that weren't even said. It feels like you're trying to maintain a connection that hasn't clearly stabilized yet, but that reaction doesn't come from nowhere. It's tied to something deeper, something that has nothing to do with this specific person, but gets activated through them. Because when a connection feels uncertain, when it doesn't fully anchor itself but also doesn't disappear, it touches that underlying question. If I stop trying, will this still stay? And that question is rarely about them. It's about what you've experienced before. It's about moments where things faded without explanation, where effort felt one-sided, where something meaningful slipped away quietly. So now, when this connection starts behaving in a way that isn't fully secure, yet also isn't gone, it triggers that same internal response. You start feeling like you need to do something to keep it alive. But here's the part that shifts everything, once you actually see it clearly. This connection is not asking you to hold on to it. It's revealing what you're afraid will happen if you don't. And that's why it feels so intense. Because it's not just about losing them. It's about confronting the idea that something meaningful could exist without you needing to chase it, manage it, or constantly think about it to keep it real. And now, it's time for today's comment of the day. This one feels honest in a very real way. How frightening it is to think that I have made a mistake. How comforting it is to think that what is meant for me cannot miss me. That contrast, that's something a lot of people live in. One side is fear, replaying decisions, wondering if you chose wrong, if you messed something up, if you missed your moment. And the other side is trust. The idea that what's truly meant for you isn't that fragile, that it doesn't disappear just because you took a wrong turn or didn't do everything perfectly. Some things find their way to you anyway. And maybe peace comes from leaning a little more into that second thought. Thank you for sharing this. What makes this even harder to process is how little sense it makes on the surface. Because if you step back and look at it logically, this connection doesn't add up to the weight it carries. It might be someone you haven't known for long, someone who came into your life unexpectedly, or even someone you thought you had already moved past. On paper, it shouldn't feel like this. There hasn't been enough time, enough depth, or enough consistency for it to have this kind of impact. And yet it does. It sits in your mind differently. It lingers longer. It holds your attention in a way that feels disproportionate to what's actually happened. And that's what makes it unsettling. Because now you can't explain it using the usual logic. You can't say, it makes sense because of this, or it developed naturally over time. It didn't follow that path. It bypassed it. And that's exactly what this Mars in Aries shift does. It removes all the layers people usually rely on to feel safe in a connection. It doesn't wait for things to build slowly or follow a comfortable timeline. It goes straight to the core of what's actually there, without asking whether you're ready to feel it or not. So instead of gradually developing feelings, you're suddenly faced with something that already feels significant, without the usual process that would justify it. That's why it feels heavier than it should. This is the part where most people lose the connection before they ever understand it, because everything in you right now is going to push you toward action. Not calm, grounded action, but fast, reactive movement. You'll feel the urge to reach out, to ask direct questions, to finally get clarity on where this is going, to define what this connection actually is, so you can stop sitting in this uncertainty. And it will feel justified. It will feel like you're just being honest or direct or not wasting time. But if you look closely, that impulse isn't coming from clarity. It's coming from pressure. It's coming from the discomfort of not knowing and the desire to resolve that discomfort as quickly as possible. That's what this Mars in Aries energy does. It speeds everything up internally. It creates this sense that something needs to happen now, that waiting is losing, that not acting is missing your chance. But acting too early doesn't bring clarity. It distorts what you're trying to understand. Because the moment you try to define this connection before it has fully shown itself, you stop observing it and start interfering with it. You move from seeing what it naturally is to shaping it based on what you need it to be, and that changes everything. If you send the message too soon, if you push for answers too early, if you try to lock something in before it has stabilized, you're no longer responding to the connection, you're reacting to your own discomfort, and that reaction creates imbalance. You start overgiving, thinking it will create security. You explain more than necessary, thinking it will make things clearer. You try to prove your value, thinking it will make the connection solidify faster. But it doesn't work like that. Doing more doesn't make something real. It just makes you more invested in something you haven't fully understood yet. And that's where things get misread. Because now you're not seeing the connection for what it actually is. You're seeing it through the lens of your own actions. You're reacting to something that hasn't even completed its first phase, and then trying to interpret the outcome of that reaction. That's why people end up confused, thinking something changed, when in reality, they never gave it the space to reveal itself properly. This window isn't about forcing clarity. It's about allowing clarity to show up on its own terms. That means holding your position, not chasing, not pulling away, not trying to control the pace, just staying grounded in yourself while the connection unfolds. Because when you don't rush it, when you don't interfere with it, you start to see something most people never get to see, what this connection actually is, without distortion. There's something you haven't fully considered yet. You've been so focused on trying to understand them, why they act the way they do, why they come close and then pull back, why they feel so present one moment and distant the next, that you haven't stopped to look at the other side of it. Because, from their perspective, you don't make complete sense either. The same way you're sitting there trying to piece this together, they're doing something very similar. Maybe not in the exact same way, maybe not with the same awareness, but they feel it. They feel that this connection is different. They feel that it carries weight they can't easily explain. They feel that something about this doesn't fit into their normal way of relating to people, and that unsettles them just as much. This Mars in Aries shift doesn't create a one-sided experience. It creates a current that moves both ways. Whatever intensity you're feeling, whatever pull, whatever sense that something is happening beneath the surface, it's not isolated to you, it's shared. The connection isn't confusing because one of you doesn't understand, it's confusing because neither of you fully do. That's what levels everything, because now it's not about someone having control and the other reacting. It's not about one person being certain and the other unsure. It's two people caught in the same movement, both trying to make sense of something that didn't build in a predictable way. And when you realize that, the dynamic shifts. You're not chasing clarity from someone who has it. You're not waiting for them to figure it out while you already have. You're both inside the same experience, just processing it differently. That's why their behavior doesn't feel calculated, it feels inconsistent. Because it is. Not in a careless way, but in a way that reflects someone trying to navigate something they didn't expect to feel. One of the most frustrating parts of this entire experience is how impossible it is to define what this actually is. You try to place it somewhere so your mind can relax, but every time you think you've figured it out, it stops fitting. It doesn't sit comfortably as a friendship because there's too much weight behind it. It doesn't fully feel like a relationship because there's no structure holding it in place. It's not closure because it hasn't ended, and it's not completely new because it already feels like something established. So your mind keeps trying to organize it. It keeps looking for a category, something familiar it can use to make sense of what's happening. That's how the brain works. It needs things to be labeled so it can predict what comes next. But every time it tries to file this connection somewhere, it gets rejected. And that's exactly why it keeps coming back into your awareness. Because unfinished things don't stay quiet in the mind. Anything that can't be placed, defined, or understood properly keeps pulling your attention until it finds resolution. That's why this feels mentally consuming. It's not just about the person, it's about the fact that your mind cannot settle on what this is. Mars in Aries energy doesn't help with that. It doesn't slow things down so you can analyze them carefully. It pushes things into motion before they've been categorized. It creates experiences that are felt before they are understood, and that completely bypasses the way you're used to processing connections. So instead of something gradually making sense, you're dealing with something that already feels important, but doesn't have a clear identity yet. At a certain point, if you look at this closely enough, the focus starts to shift away from them and back onto you. Because what makes this connection feel so unfamiliar isn't just how they act or how the situation unfolds, it's how you are within it. The way you think, the way you react, the things you notice, the impulses you feel, they don't fully match how you usually move in other connections. And that's what makes it unsettling. You might find yourself caring in a way that feels stronger than expected, or hesitating in moments where you would normally be certain. You might notice reactions that don't align with your usual patterns, like being more aware, more alert, or even more uncertain than you're used to. It's not just that this connection is different, it's that you are different inside it. And that's where most people miss what's actually happening. They keep trying to figure out the other person, trying to decode their behavior, trying to understand their signals, when the real shift is happening internally. Because this connection is reflecting parts of you that don't usually come forward so quickly. It brings out reactions, desires, boundaries, and instincts that don't normally surface in everyday interactions. Not in an obvious way, not in a dramatic or exaggerated way, but in a subtle shift that you can feel if you pay attention. You're not just seeing them differently, you're seeing yourself in a way you haven't before. That's why it feels unfamiliar. And if you're still here, still watching, I genuinely appreciate that more than you think. I know this kind of message isn't something you just casually sit through. It asks you to pay attention to things that aren't always easy to explain, and the fact that you stayed all the way to this point says a lot about where you are right now. If something in this connected with you even slightly, then you are already more aware than you were before you clicked on this video. Some things don't come into your life to confuse you. They come to shift something quietly, and only later does it start to make sense. So as this unfolds over the next few days, stay present, stay steady, and trust that what's meant to become clear will.